All right, guys, this is what some might consider the heart of the system, which is the recovery machine itself. So this particular model that I have is a Mastercool 69,000. And this is really the most entry-level machine. You can see in the box here, there's just a few, kind of wadded paper type packing, and then the unit itself. Sit right here. Also in the package is another warranty pamphlet and an owner's manual. So that's all you get inside the package. The unit is, trying to get you a rough idea of how big it is, right? So it's fairly portable, but it's not, super lightweight. But it does represent a very portable unit overall. And then, of course, on the bottom, feels like there's rubber feet down there. Yep. So this guy, plus this equipment, would form the bare minimum of what you would need. But we're actually going to go one step further with this next package that we do next. But at a minimum, this setup plus a vacuum pump and the set of gauges that we use to commission the cylinder would give you what you needed to do basic recovery. What's missing on a system like this, though, is a couple of things that are missing. So with these three pieces of equipment here, we know how much refrigerant we took out of the system, but we don't know how much compressor oil or PAG oil that we pulled out, because this particular setup that we're looking at here has no way to separate the oil from the refrigerant. So now we don't know if we took out oil with the refrigerant. Now we don't know if we have the right charge of oil in the system. The other thing that's missing on this particular unit, it doesn't have any way to filter the refrigerant that we're taking out of the system. So if we're doing a repair, or say on a blown compressor, there could potentially be metal fragments in the refrigerant. We don't want to get that in here and damage the unit. So having a way to protect the unit, this is about protecting the unit, because when we recover refrigerant into something like this, we're not really intending to put it back into the vehicle. If you have any kind of a leak at all, you have no idea if this is contaminated. So you're trying to protect the unit. And so what we're going to go to next is an accessory that does protect this unit and provides the oil separation capability that we're looking for. You can get a unit from Mastercool and others that have those capabilities built in, a built-in filter dryer and a built-in oil separator. But I actually found piecing it together separately was cheaper, and that's why I went this way. So let's move on to the next component. All right, guys, we're on the last component of this build that we're doing. So I got a couple of Mastercool couplers, R134a couplers that I'm going to use with this unit. I'll just introduce those part numbers here real quick. 82934E, which is the blue low side, and 82834E, which is the red high side. So it's an 8 for the high and a 9 for the low. And these are 1/4 MFL connectors on the end, male flared line. Inside the package, you get a box of hoses, and there's also a ball valve in there too for the vacuum pump. And then very similar to the scale, comes in its own carrying case. Now, what is this thing? Well, this is called a RecoveryMate. And remember, I was mentioning that you can get some things, you can get some accessories on a recovery machine this one doesn't have. For example, we can see, I think this is where the float switch might have connected to the cylinder. For example, down here I can feel, if I can tilt this up for you guys, we can see here's where the oil separator accessory would have went on a higher end model. Here's where the filter dryer input would have went on a higher end model. But when I combine this 6900 with this the 6900 with the 69500, then I get all of those features. And in my case, I found it to be less expensive. So what's inside here? Well, if we can remember to undo the ends first. Again, you got a user manual and a warranty card. What you get in this guy is what we're missing. You actually get a very nice oil separator unit. You get a filter dryer unit. There's also a little capped cover here, if I can get it off. This little device here, as the refrigerant's going in, is color-coded to the moisture level, so you can tell if the refrigerant's been contaminated with moisture. And then you get a 4-way manifold here, which is very nice setup along with sight glass. So this plus this now gives us a really nice recovery system where we can get very precise measurements of how much refrigerant we took out of the automotive system and how much oil, how much PAG oil we took out of the automotive system. So let's go through how you would cable all this up. So I'm going to kind of let it sit like this. I think that'll be sturdy enough, kind of like a little Z. I'm going to open these hoses. So like I said, they give you a little valve in here, which I believe is for the vacuum pump line. The vacuum pump line would be the black one. And you've got a yellow line which goes to the tank. Got 2 blue lines. One goes to the refrigerant recovery machine. The other one goes to the vehicle. Same with the red high lines. One's going to go to the vehicle, and one's going to go over to the tank. So we're going to go ahead and open up our couplers first. And they're not welded or anything. They're just kind of like snaps, but they are kind of tight. And then what I'm going to do is start hooking these guys up. So I'm going to undo this line, and all of these lines are 1/4 MFL. Now, the reason I'm just letting the camera roll here is I know some folks are just curious about little details. They might be thinking of purchasing this same piece of equipment. So they'd like to see all the different angles and views of hooking it up. So personally, what I like to do with these types of coupler ends is I like to use the angled end of the hose for the coupler. Just a personal preference. So there's the one that goes to the vehicle. And then this will be our load that goes to the vehicle. These are really nice hoses here. I'll tell you the main reason I say they're nice hoses. You can see these are made in the USA, not some Chinese junk. All right. Now we know this guy is going to end up going over to the vacuum pump. So we'll go ahead and put our angled end on that. Now I'm going to need a cheat sheet. And what I did is I took a page out of the manual online and I just blew it up for myself because there's several different things we got to hook up here. I'll leave it down here for you guys to reference while I'm doing it. So I'm just going to start at the recovery machine. And on the recovery machine side, I prefer to use the angled ends of the hose. So we're going to run from the recovery machine blue into, now you can see here sometimes the designs on these products change. So you can see here they've added like several new elbows, and they don't have that here. You just got to pay attention to what you're doing, right? So this is the end with the filter dryer and the moisture sight glass. And then the next one we're going to do is the vehicle side over here to the high. And again, these are just knurled knobs, so finger tight only. All right, the next one we're going to do is the vehicle low side. Goes into here. The next one we're going to do is the vacuum pump. Okay, the next one we're going to do is from the recovery machine to the tank or cylinder. And again, I just prefer to use the angled side hoses on the recovery machine just because these are at an angle. Be less stress on the line. And then we're going to take this guy and hook him up to the red line on the cylinder. And now you can see why we used those 1/2-inch Acme to 1/4-inch MFL adapters, because we needed them for this particular piece of equipment. All right, and then the last line we have left is going to run from our refrigerant line right here. It's kind of close quarters in here to squeeze your fingers around here and tighten it, and then we'll run this. All right, guys, one thing very important to notice on this graphic, it messed me up when I first did it until I took another look at it. You see the face or the picture kind of looks like what you'd traditionally expect to see with a vapor valve on the left when you're facing it and a liquid valve on the right. But actually what they're showing, just because of the way the top handle that's welded onto the cylinder looks. But actually what they're showing is the right-hand side has the short tube, which is a vapor line, and the left-hand side has the long tube, which is the liquid line. So actually what we're going to end up doing on our cylinder, even though it's a Mastercool 1, it's not the same as this graphic, we're going to end up reversing these. So we're going to end up putting the red line on the outlet of the recovery machine onto this the blue line, and we're going to put the yellow onto the red line, just like this. So I don't know why they drew it the way they drew it. Tighten these up, I'll show you what I mean. Yeah, so if you look at the handle welded on the tank and the opening like this that you would see in the drawing, you would think that the yellow goes on the left and the red goes on the right. It's actually the other way around. The red goes on the vapor line and the yellow goes on the liquid line. So we actually have to flip it. So just make sure you note that. I actually caught myself after we started that vacuum test, and I had to undo it and redo it. So let's just keep going. Okay, so we've got everything hooked up. Now what we're going to make sure is that all of these valves are in the closed position. Closed position, closed position, closed position, closed position, closed, 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 and closed. And now the vacuum line also in the closed position. I'm just going to kind of reorient it. At that point, we've got it cabled up. So it looks complicated. It's the price you pay for saving some money on having all of this built into one unit. I'll roll some prices on a slide later on in this video. But now we're going to move on to the next step. So now we've got it all cabled together. What we're going to have to do now is we're going to have to purge atmospheric moisture, basically air that's been out here, out of all of these lines, out of all of these copper lines that are part of this, the manifold, out of the recovery machine itself. And then we'll be able to actually use the unit. So now we're going to move on to that step. So to do that, we're going to need our vacuum pump again. And that's where we're going to need that 1/4 adapter that I was talking about earlier, so that we can use this valve that we get from Mastercool that goes on this line. So I'm going to go bring the vacuum pump over. We're going to get it hooked up, going to get it cabled up, and then we're going to go ahead and show you how you configure these various switches to evacuate all of the atmospheric air from all of these lines. All right, guys, let's get started on evacuating the atmosphere from this. So we've got our trusty vacuum pump back, and we're going to put another Mastercool 82635 adapter. Now, it's just a personal preference. I like it to stick out like this, you know, rather than using the R12 1/4 SAE type that's on the top here. This would be the last connection that we need to make on this particular setup. And again, you don't go crazy on this brass, you just want it snug. And now we can run this valve that was given to us with the kit. All right, now everything is ready to go. We have both these couplers in the closed position. Just making sure. And we have all of these other valves in the closed position. These are in the closed. This would be open. This is closed on these type of valves. So this is closed. All of these are closed. On the recovery machine, it tells you, there's a little notch here, tells you this is the closed position for the inlet and outlet. And then this is currently in the purge position. And that's where you want to start on the pump. You want this guy in the purge position. So what we're going to do, now before I set these switches, let me also point out that this RecoveryMate also includes, forgot to mention it in the previous video segment, includes this little container, which is what you would use along with a piece of hose to recover the PAG oil that had been separated. So that's another thing that's included with the kit. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and evacuate all of the atmosphere out of that. And in order to do that, we got to set the following valves in a particular position. So I'll bring this piece of paper back over here so it might be more useful for you to reference. We got to take valve 1 and valve 2 and valve 10 and valve 11, and we're going to open them. So we're going to open 1, 2, 10, and 11. And then we're also going to open 15 and 16. 15 and 16. Now what that does is that now completes the circuit, right? So you can see from the recovery machine, we go through here, we go up through here, separate the oil, come out through here, enter the manifold. And in entering the manifold, you're either going to go out the vacuum line if the vacuum is going, or you're going to go into the recovery machine or the vehicle, depending on which of these lines we follow, or the tank. So now with those particular valves in the open position, we're going to keep this valve closed until we get this going. And we're going to keep all of these other valves closed, and you definitely do not open any valves on the recovery tank, of course. We're going to keep the valves, of course, closed on the AC system on the vehicle. Now we'll be able to turn the tank on. This thing's kind of loud, so you might want to have safety protection, ear protection, eye protection. It's up to you. And at this point, we're going to turn this guy on. And now we're going to open the valve. You can see our gauge is reading into the vacuum. So we're already well down to the 30 position. Now we're going to open the valve on the recovery machine. And now we're going to be pulling a vacuum over here as well. So open, purge, open. Open, 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 open. Open, open, closed, closed, open. If this had been a system that's been used a lot, we would just run this point to vacuum and then we would be ready to use it. But since it's all brand new, we're interested in seeing if we have any leaks. So we're actually going to pull a vacuum on this for a few minutes. Probably going to let this guy go for 2 or 3 minutes here. And then we're going to shut him off and we're going to see if he holds the vacuum. Very much like we would do on the vehicle itself, just to make sure all this new equipment is leak-free, right? You never know. Maybe somebody didn't tighten up a fitting here, or maybe somebody didn't tighten up a fitting at the manufacturer. Let's find out now before we get it onto a vehicle trying to do something. So we're going to come back in about 5 minutes, and we're going to... All right, guys, we've let it go for 5 minutes here. I'm going to shut it off. At this stage, we're just going to make sure that we can hold this vacuum for 15 minutes or so. I'm going to be looking at both of these gauges. As soon as that works, I can pull these covers off because I'm sure all this equipment has passed the test and it'll be ready to use on our first repair. So we'll come back in 15. make sure that everything is holding, and wrap it up. So see you in 15. All right, guys, it's been 15 minutes. We're looking good. We can see that our low gauge is holding on the manifold side, and it's holding on the recovery machine side. Now, when I look at the manifold side, you know, it's in the same position it was, but it's in a slightly different position than the one on the recovery machine. I don't know if I like that or not. I might try to see, is there some way to check the calibration on this, because that's kind of unusual. There's another chance that maybe I didn't really notice it. Maybe for some reason I didn't get this guy quite down to the same level as that guy, but technically they should both be reading the same. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that. I'll have to look into that separately, and maybe I'll put something on the video description when I figure that out. But I'm satisfied after 15 minutes that we don't have any gross leaks in this setup, and we're ready to put it into actual work on a repair. And I'll show that in a later video when I get the opportunity. So I'm happy with this setup. I did a lot of research on it, and I just took the time to share it with you in case you were thinking about this kind of equipment. This is definitely, you know, not what you'd want to do necessarily for if you just got your own vehicle or something. If you're doing work on multiple vehicles, though, if you have a small shop and you got a fleet of trucks, or maybe you're just running a salvage yard and you want to recover the refrigerant before you put the vehicles out, just like you're recovering the other fluids from the vehicles, this is a very nice setup, I think, for all of those purposes, for recovering the refrigerant and safely storing it, protecting the atmosphere, meeting Clean Air Act Section 609 regulations. Definitely do recommend you take that training if you're going to use this kind of equipment as well. And also being able to get the precise amount of refrigerant back into the vehicle and the precise amount of oil added back into the vehicle. If you got comments on this equipment or similar equipment from other manufacturers like Yellow Jacket or Robin Air, and you want to just share them down below with how they compare to what I've showed you here from Mastercool, please leave a comment down below. If you found the video interesting, or if you found it useful, go ahead and hit that like button. It helps with the feedback, so I know what kind of videos people like me to take the time to record and share. And please consider subscribing. Thanks for watching.